What's up, people? It's Josh here, and my second video of the day here. Before I go to work, I would like to do a quick one about democracy. I didn't really intend to do this one, but at the end of the last video I kind of popped in on democracy for a minute, and I didn't want to expound on it there because, well, it's a deep subject that has a lot of angles. I think that most of us are confused about what a republic or a democracy really is, what a Republican or a Democrat really stand for. And those of you who believe that you do know the difference, take a second look at it. I'm not saying you don't, but realize the similarities are so much more than the differences. Yet we pick out the differences because those are the things that we want to focus on. Look at these people. Look at what they want to do. Look at the laws they want to pass. That's wrong. We don't want to do that. Instead of pulling together and saying, hey, we agree on these points, maybe we should do something about it. Our democracy, what we call it in this Republic of the U.S., which is actually an empire, is a failed democracy. And there's a few reasons for that, and this ties in with the video I just made about history. And this is why history is so important. Not just to learn about what wars have been created and why, but what governmental structures have functioned and not functioned. And how societies really do choose to succeed or fail based on their own desires and their own shortcomings and their own ignorance. Now, a democracy plays upon the ignorance of the people. A democracy uses the emotions of the people in that society to justify and warrant wars, hatred, division. These fears that have been instilled, these fears of threat of attack or threat of you losing your freedoms, those are the fears that are used against us in order to take from others. Whether it's to take resources, whether it's to shut down their religions or belief systems, or whether it's to justify going into a place like Iraq. I mean, there are still plenty of people who defend our right to go into Iraq. And I was very opposed to that war. Strongly opposed. I mean, I remember I went to the bar right after the war started and I sang my only karaoke song I've ever done. It was War Pigs by Black Sabbath. And those who don't know the song, it's about generals basically sending off kids to die. And I remember the way I got the look from the guy who was running the karaoke thing. He's like, after I was done with the song, he's like, oh yeah, give him a hand. And then he says, oh, and don't forget to support our troops. The discomfort that I gave him by merely singing a song opposing war during a time of war shows how ignorant people are and how a society can believe everything they're told. I was disgusted by even that comment. I'm sick of hearing support the troops, so I was always that one guy that says, why should I support the troops? Just because they're fighting a war for this country? But what if I don't stand for this country's principles? And then people say, you're un-American, you know? And I say, but I love this country, I just hate the government. And they say, if you don't like it, why don't you move out? And I say, because you don't leave a problem, because there's a problem. You don't leave your family because you argue with your wife. You don't leave your kids because they won't listen to you. You teach them. And the people of our country are our kids, our brothers and sisters, and our parents. So, by thinking about this a long time, I've come to the conclusion that democracy really is a failed state. And I didn't, I was never a Democrat. I was never a Democrat. I was never a Republican. I'm not even an independent. I'm not a politically affiliated person. I'm not a partisan person. But I do understand the need for that partisanship. If everyone's in agreement, then people become passive. So if there's a conflict that's arising, then people are forced to argue their point. And by arguing their point, they have to bring forth evidence and show cause. This can be very beneficial for a society that's trying to make a decision where the people in a democracy vote on issues. But if the people aren't aware of the issues, and they don't have the full understanding of them, then the ignorance causes major problems. A good example is going into a country, supporting a war where we go and invade another country. Why are we supporting this war? I think most people would say, well, because we're afraid they're going to attack us. Oh, this guy had weapons of mass destruction. or this person had harshed his people. Look at what he did to his own people. How many times have you heard that? And don't just look through your life if you're about my age or a little younger. Look at the wars, the Korean War. Look at the wars before that, World War II, World War I. World War I, they said, would be the last war. It wasn't. They've said that about every war. The whole idea is peace through war. It just doesn't work. So the people in a democracy vote on the issues. So in order to get people to vote a certain way, they have to portray falsities within the media. And on top of that, find a way to make people feel guilty for the way that they think. By saying, oh, well, you don't support this war? Well, then you don't support your country. You don't support your troops. That's why I brought the troops thing up. I've heard that so many times, you know. You got to support the troops. You've got to support the troops. A person can't really counter that without getting attacked. But I do. You know, I'm not afraid to say, why should I support someone who is 18 years old and went off to fight a war? Well, because they're doing it for your freedom. In what way is attacking these people providing freedom for me? Because I don't believe that freedom is something that's fought for or won. Freedom is something that exists. So it comes down to the interpretation of what freedom is, right? And I think that freedom is only true freedom when everyone is free. That includes the oppressed and the oppressors. And that will never happen within a warring state. So no, I don't support war. With that said, I wanted to finalize by saying now, and I'm starting to understand why we would do these things like take a particular leader out of power. A lot of folks say that the United States is first off, we're an empire. The United States is an empire. We choose to call it a democracy, and the word that we've devised to use instead is superpower. Superpower. We have supermarkets. You know, we have super savings. We have Super Bowl. We have all these super things. It's a superpower. And we dare not call it an empire because empire has connotations of history with it. The Empire of Rome, the Empire of Greece, right? So, but the fact is we are an empire. Now, being an empire, there was a question proposed in history by a lot of folks that would say, can an empire be a democracy? And the answer is generally no. Can a democracy really work as an empire? Or can an empire exist without having to take control? What I'm getting at here is that if the United States did not step into certain situations, what would the result be? In other words, if we ignored what was going on in the world and ignored people who were trying to take charge, because there are plenty of them, while most people in other nations are just peace-loving people, the leaders are still leaders, and leaders are harsh. And my example is Hitler. And the United States didn't want to get involved with that, but there was too much pressure, and Pearl Harbor was kind of the point where we said, hey, we've got to step in. Now, I know a lot of people believe Pearl Harbor was allowed to happen, and I'm with them on that. I've seen the communications that the Navy was aware that this was going to happen, and they allowed it to happen as an excuse to go to war. But you have to look at it from this point. Now, if we didn't go to war, we need an excuse to go to war to get the popular support. And if we can't explain the true depth of the situation to the public, then they have to come up with lies to convince us. And then we get angry because we were lied to. And the fact is that we have obligations in the world to deal with situations like that, to deal with nations that are going rogue. And it's really easy for a person to step back and say, hey, let another nation do what they want. But in today's world with nuclear weapons and all types of ways to destroy the world and the people, it's a little bit hard to say don't step in, to not help, I'm going to finish this up in part 2 because I'm almost out of time.